This is a pointless, silly video, but I want to do it, so I'm going to do it. And in this video, I'm going to rank books simply based off the cover alone. Do I like the cover or do I not like the cover? Let's do it. Now, I get this is going to be completely subjective. And I just grabbed a handful of titles, a few more than a dozen, that I'm going to place on this tier list. S being, of course, the top of the tier, D being the lowest of the tier. I grabbed some popular fantasy titles, some fantasy titles that I love, along with some book covers that I'm familiar with, and I'm just going to place them according to how I feel they look. Are they connected to the story and the plot and the narrative at hand? Do they evoke some kind of feeling or emotion within me, or are they just bland, boring, and could have been done better? This is also somewhat difficult because there are multiple covers for different books. For the most part, I tried to go with the first cover, and then in other cases, I tried to go for the cover that I found most popular, or the one that was, I don't know, just most in public now. Might have messed up on some of these, but again, who cares? This video is for fun. We'll start with this first cover of Dune. This, of course, is not the original cover. The original cover of Dune is pretty boring. This one, and you can see pretty much the whole thing there, is very pretty, but also very minimalistic. I love that Dune is coming down in a vertical way there with that font, and then you've got, I would assume, Paul Atreides there in the distance, and then you've got the sand dunes. There's not much to it, but I think that really works here, and it's very it's artistic in what they're trying to do here. I like this cover. I like it a lot more even than the original, but it's definitely not S tier. It's not something that just blows me away. It doesn't even necessarily give me the feeling of like desolation or a deserted desert. It gives you desert, but it doesn't give you like this lonely, alone. It doesn't speak much to the story outside of the dunes itself. I think it's good. I'm just going to put it right there in the middle for now. If we need to move it later, we can. I like it. We're going to go to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone, for those of you that are not here in the US, which I prefer that title tenfold. But this one's Sorcerer's Stone, and we do have young Harry that's flying with his on his broom, trying to get the Quidditch, I guess. So not the Quidditch, that's the sport. What? Trying to get the, oh my goodness, it's been a little while since I've read it. Trying to get the snitch. That's what it is. And maybe that's like Hogwarts a little bit. That is, I haven't really studied. No, Hogwarts is in the background there. What is, It's interesting. This is a small picture, so I can't really see the scar on his forehead. I'm sure it's there. It's intriguing, but I don't think that this is the best. We're going for that age group and that audience. So again, it's not bad. Riding on a broom trying to catch something, that is interesting, especially during that time Quidditch was an unknown commodity. That's where it's going to go for now. Man, we're just kind of like middle of the line here. So let's move on to one that is going to go higher than B tier, and that is Scythe. I didn't care for the book as much. I've talked about it some maybe on my channel, but I love the cover. I love the colors. It's not white there in the middle. It's more of just that cream with that deep dark red, and then you've got the scythe with our main character. I don't even remember her name there, and her face cuts into the scythe. You kind of see another face on the other side of that scythe. Really good cover here. I'm realizing that these covers are relatively small, and it's hard to see them all. And if I had an editor, then I would have the big image pop up on the screen as we start to talk about it, but that's a lot of work. I like this one. I don't know if it's S tier in the best of the best, but it's definitely high A tier. Scythe is a really good cover. The cover I enjoyed even more than the book. In fact, the entire series has some really good covers that are very comparable to what this original one does, and so I like that. All right, here we go with Joe Abercrombie, The Blade Itself, the first book in the trilogy. I don't think it's called the Blade Itself trilogy, and again, the picture is way too small for me to see what the trilogy is called. I know you're gonna... I've only read the first 2 books in the trilogy, and I've just recently done them this year, and so it's all relatively new to me. This cover is trash. It's trash. What is that? Is it a parchment with a little bit of blood splatter and maybe some burnt? That's not good at all. There's not even a blade on the cover. That's a really, really bad cover. Worst one we've seen so far. I think most of his covers are like this. Although I have seen a better Blade Itself cover, I believe, that it's a white cover with a blade on it. That one, however, I just think is absolute garbage. Not even like showing some kind of fantasy, just kind of like, I know it's grimdark, right? So you're trying to give us a little bit of eerie, I don't know, it's plain, it's boring, it's D. And then we've got the first Robert Jordan Eye of the World, Wheel of Time book, and this is fantasy, right? We've got a knight on a horse, we've got another squire on a horse. I don't know if I've even acknowledged this on my channel before. I have never read one of these books. They're intimidating, they're big, and then the series is massive. I do want to read it, because for many reasons. One, because it's one of the greatest fantasy series of our generation. And then Brandon Sanderson, my favorite author, one of my favorite authors at least, finishes this series after Robert Jordan passed away. So I've heard really good things about this book and the series. I've known about it for a long time. I would come across this book in junior high, even in high school, and I would just not do it because they're thick. They're thick. And it's a commitment. If I'm going to start, I'm going to finish it. Let's go back to the cover. You've got the moon in the background, more massive than it deserves to be. I like the colors. I think that this works really well. Very stereotypical, generic fantasy, but again, I think done really, really well here. So I think it's better than Dune. I do think it's up here in the A territory. We're still not going up to S. Is it better than Scythe is the question here. Ooh, you've got more colors than Scythe, but I like the vibe that Scythe portrays here even more than Eye of the World. Truth be told, since I haven't read Eye of the World, I don't know if there's other things to be gleaned here in the image, in the cover artwork that I'm missing out on by not having read the story. Like, I don't even know necessarily who those characters are, which again, right? Phooey on me. But I'm going to place it there. A territory, but after Scythe for now. Red Rising, I snuck this one in here. It is fantasy. It is. It's also sci-fi, but those often blend. Red Rising, one of my favorite books. Love this series. I also like the simplistic nature of this cover. We've got a wing, which speaks to the rising nature, I guess, of the book, but if I can recall, and I've read the book 3 times, I believe, that there is no red wing as a symbol or anything here. It does work well against the black background with red rising going up the side there. It's very pretty. I like it, but it doesn't, and it stands out, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's nothing extraordinary. I do like it though. So, where does that place us? I think, for now, it places us in between. Let's place it here. The reason why I'm doing that, and maybe I didn't give the Sorcerer's Stone enough credit. The reason why it doesn't speak to me now is because I think that cover art ages a little bit. And I know they've done, goodness, there's probably another dozen plus new covers for Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone alone, and I've seen some of them, and I love some of those art pieces. But when it comes to this original cover, it doesn't speak to me anymore. However, as a kid, I think that probably works. Red Rising is good, but it doesn't speak to the narrative as much, and I'm going to leave it there for now. All right, another confession that I've already made on the channel before. I've never read or seen any of the Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire books or movies or books, and so I don't know what might be the story that might the story that might be told in this cover alone. I'm just looking at it from an outside perspective, and I see Martin Huge, because of course his name's gonna sell. And then I see a Game of Thrones, which is the first book in A Song of Ice and Fire, if I'm even correct on that. And all we got here is a blue background with a sword. I'm sure that sword is important, but I don't know. And that is fantasy, but it is boring. Boring, boring, boring. It's better than the blade itself because at least it's got a blade on the cover, but there's nothing that's being spoken or told here. Again, might be wrong. I acknowledge that. Tell me in the comments below if there's something epic about this sword, or if there's an engraving or an embossing on the sword that shoots it to a whole nother level. But for now, I'm going to place it solidly in the C category. You got a sword on it. It tells me that we're going to read kind of this medieval European type fantasy. It's a cool looking sword. It's better than the blade itself, but so it's not garbage in the D category, which is kind of my representation or my understanding, at least for this video. But it is subpar. We're going with a C there. And then we've got the Fellowship of the Ring, right? First book in the Lord of the Rings series, the Lord of the Rings trilogy by Tolkien. This isn't the original cover, as far as I know. This is kind of a remake. I tried to look around. There's so many different covers for this. I mean, when you've got a fantasy series of this renown, you're going to have so many different kinds of covers. I do like this design. Let me just place it just to pick it up again so you can see. From what I gather, and I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan, we've got the script around the center ring, which is the one ring to rule them all. We've got the 3 rings on the outside. And then it looks, is that the eye of, I don't know if it's the eye of Sauron in the middle, but it's again, simplistic, but I think it really works here in that gold yellow kind of design. So I think it's better than Red Rising because it actually speaks to the narrative at hand. I like it much better than those. We're going to put it up in the A territory here. It's so simplistic here. We don't have any so in both Scythe and in Eye of the World, we have characters that we can see. We don't have much characterization of Scythe, but we at least see characters, people. We don't have that here, but do I like that decision for Fellowship of the Ring? And I do. I like that for Fellowship of the Ring. So I am going to place it. It's in the A cat. It's not all S tier. I hope we're going to get an S tier. But for now, I don't like it as much as Eye of the World and Scythe. So I'm going to place it in the A territory, but at the bottom for now. All right, and then we've got The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Again, one of my favorite authors of all time. Here in this cover, I like it. It's fantasy. We've got a massive sword, and we've got this great gorge with someone far in the distance. The problem here, after reading this book and reading the series, is this doesn't. And I've heard Sanderson talk about it before, saying that the cover is different than the story, and they need to connect in some ways, but it's not supposed to be a direct representation of what's going on in the narrative. So I get that. But I don't like that. And so seeing here these characters and it not really making exact sense for the story, and if you've read it, you know, some people might say like this is Dalinar that's saluting to maybe Eshonai or someone from the Parsha. I don't want to get deep into it, and maybe you know that this speaks to something more specific. But I've looked at it and I've read the story multiple times. I don't think that this is a direct representation of what's going on in the story. And in Way of Kings, it's primarily Kaladin's story, right? But here we don't have Kaladin on the front cover. That being said, it's still beautiful with the sun in the distance and the clouds, kind of speaking of maybe the storms, the Everstorms. It's epic, and it's epic fantasy, so that works. Goodness, it's not S tier. I don't give it S tier, but I think it works. I think it works better even. Ooh, where? It's A tier. No, I think it works better than that. Just horse riding doesn't necessarily do it for me. But seeing that armor with that cape, saluting with that sword, something in the distance, all of those things, top of the A tier for me right now. Maybe I'm jaded. Maybe I'm biased. I love Sanderson. I love the Stormlight Archive. Get over it. Then we've got The Lies of Locke Lamora by Lynch, and it's boring. You don't even know what's going on necessarily. It's kind of like just dark and polluted, the cover. It's kind of even hard to read Locke and Lamora because of the dark, gritty nature of it. I think there's more going on here with some of the design, but it's just not pretty. These brown tones, by the way, I just don't necessarily work for me, but I guess they work for a wide audience. I just read The Lies of Locke Lamora within the last couple of months. I didn't like it as much as I thought that I would, and same with the cover. I think there are other covers that I would enjoy more that are out and published, but this cover just does not do it for me. It definitely is better than the blade itself. But it's not good. It's not good. It's not even C. So it is trash. We're going to put it in the trash category in D, but it is much better than the blade itself. Being much better than the blade itself, is it C? Let's leave it in C for right now. Ender's Game. Totally not fantasy. Completely sci-fi. One of my favorite books of all time. Get over it. I don't like the cover. I've heard Card talk about before, the only difference between fantasy and sci-fi is that on fantasy covers you need a sword, and on sci-fi covers you need something metal in space. And so that's what they did here. It's not a great cover. You do have a little bit of colorization here. It's kind of dark even here, but I think it's the space station here that's in the foreground, and then in the distance you've got space or some kind of maybe even distant planet. It's what we're looking at a little bit. And you've got a fighter, kind of like a fighter ship there here in the closest foreground. But it's not great. This worked probably for the mid to late 80s, which I believe is when Ender's Game released. But it needed updated covers now, which they do have updated covers, and they have even movie covers, which no, don't do that. I don't like that. I know that it helps you sell, but that's not my favorite. Ender's Game, however, is definitely not trash, is better than both of those. Is it B? Maybe. I don't think it's a great cover. I think you can definitely do better. I love you, Ender, but we're going to put you in the C category, but at the top of the C category. Look, you're still ahead of a Game of Thrones, which is a big deal. Okay, Orson Scott Card, thanks for watching this video. I love you. And I Darken. Thankfully, we're going straight to the S tier with that. Don't even have to talk about it much. This entire series has some of the best, most beautiful cover art. This one's even a little bit washed out. I couldn't find a better image or better graphic for some reason, but look at this series. It's the Conquerors series, I believe, the Conquerors saga, and it's by Kirsten White. And I Darken has a spear that is shoved up through, I believe in this one, it is a flower, and the pink purple flower is just being shredded, which is perfect imagery for what happens in the story. Perfect imagery of what happens in the story. And I believe each of these covers in this trilogy is another weapon that is slicing through something. On the last one, I believe it's a pomegranate, maybe? Or it's some kind of fruit that's been completely spliced open. They are all absolutely beautiful, and I think this one works. Again, it's somewhat simplistic in what is on display here. We don't have many things going on. It's really just two things that are happening with the weapon and the flower, but it is beautiful. You need to check out all three of these books. S tier, easy for me. That works for me completely. Back to Brandon Sanderson, we've got Mistborn, The Final Empire. It's the first book, and I believe this was the original cover. Again, they've done many since then. This has a lot going on, and being so small, you can't really tell. But we do have Vin with her mist cloak, and we do have one of the Steel, I believe that's one of the Steel Inquisitors that are there, and a lot of action, a lot of movement. So I think it's good, but it is a lot. It is a lot, and I think they did better ones since. That's kind of a reoccurring theme here. It's in the A category, but I'm going to place it at the bottom of the A category. Man, it speaks directly to the story, but I don't like it. Oh man, what's going on here? So this is good, but they're just on a horse. Did you just get demoted big time, Eye of the World? I think you did. You did. You're still in the A category, don't worry. I might move you to the B if you keep looking at me like that, though. All right, we've got just a few more books. 3 more books. Sinlin Ascends is a recent treasure that I have found. It is an indie series that is written by Josiah Bancroft. It is excellent, and the covers are beautiful. All of them, there's going to be 4 of them, but there's only 3 so far, are in this same motif. We've got the tower kind of in the background, with through the center of it, we've got some kind of artwork going on. Here in the first one, we've got our main character, this man, Thomas Sinlin, that is kind of being trapped by the tower, which is a perfect representation of what's happening in the story. We've also got, and it doesn't do it justice here, but this brilliant red popped against that black. And I know we've got that tan brown, but that I don't like in Lies of Locke Lamore and the blade itself, but it's overtaken by what's happening there in the center and the majority of the cover. And then whatever art is in the middle of the tower is the same color that is used for the title. So here in Sinlin Ascends, we've got this one. I think it gets even better as the series progresses, but this cover speaks to me, and I'm like, I want to read this. Man, it is up. It's not S. It's S tier. It's S tier. It deserves to be up there with And I Darken. It's not as good as And I Darken, but it's better than Way of Kings, better than Scythe. That one works for me. Sinlin Ascends. Not only is the book and the series good so far, but the cover art, man, I don't know how he did it as an indie author and publisher. Published indie at first. Anyways, it's great. It deserves S tier. Poppy War. All right, I think this works. Again, very simplistic, but we've got kind of like the poppy fumes and smoke that is blurring the title a little bit. We've got our main character there in the background looking fierce as ever with her bow. I like this. I think that it works. It's simplistic. B or A. It's not S tier for sure. I think it's too simplistic and not telling enough to be A tier, so I'm going to place it B. I don't like it as much as Dune, but I do like it. I don't, it's right there. It's right there. That's exactly where it needs to be, between Harry Potter and Red Rising. I'm giving Sorcerer's Stone more as this video has gone on, because, and I'm not moving it up, but I'm giving it more credit than I maybe gave it originally, just because I think that it works for the audience that it was shooting for and the time that it was shooting for, and it does hold up. Name of the Wind, this is somewhat unfair because I don't think that this was the original cover. I love this. It is, we've got our main character, Kvoth, there is kind of shrouded in this greenery and the trees, and he's mysterious. Now, not much is spoken here, not much is told here, but I like the color scheme. I like the look. I like that he's robed and you don't really see much of his face. I don't know if in this one you can see his red hair, which would be awesome if you could see that peeking out from that hood, but this works. This works. It's really pretty, really good. Doesn't speak much though to what's going on. And it's a very character-driven novel, so maybe that's okay because there's the character. But you don't see him with his lute. Is that what he plays? You don't see him you wouldn't know anything about this book just seeing that, except that it's somewhat fantasy in nature. So it's in the same category as Dune in the simplicity here with the B category. But I like the color a little bit more, and I like that you can see the character clearly. Man, it's a lot like Dune, isn't it? But I think that those few things knocks it up to the A territory. And I personally like it. Am I moving? He's still looking at me like that. You've got enough color there that I'm going to leave you in the A category. No, I'm not. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. Let's go through them one more time, make sure that we're good. So, And I Darken, Sinlin Ascends, both easy S tier category for me. They're beautiful. And then we've got Way of the Kings. I don't know why I keep saying the Kings. The Way of Kings. Is it better than Scythe? Barely. Then we've got, yes, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings. We've got Mistborn, The Final Empire, Name of the Wind. I think that works. I kind of like Name of the Wind better than Mistborn. I do. Sorry, Vin, Elland. And then we've got, you moved down to B category, and I think that's where you need to be. Dune is right after you, followed by Harry Potter, which I have more of a fondness for the cover now that this video is coming to an end. And then we've got Poppy War, which is great, beautiful. See, I still think these are good. Red Rising is still good. Ender's Game, that's where we start to lack. And then we've got just a sword to nothing, to absolutely nothing, a bloody burnt parchment. That's where we're going to end. Wow, you probably disagree heavily. Please let me know where. Please let me know where in the comments down below. I know that you're going to disagree with a lot of this, and that's fine. That's what this video is about. It's completely subjective. So let me know where you disagree. Let me know where you agree. And then this was a complete random selection. If I were to do this again, what fantasy or sci-fi young adult cover art books should I include in this list? Whether they're good or bad, some big ones that I missed, let me know in the comments down below, and I would love to do this video, part 2 of this video, and have a whole new set of books to do it with next time. As always, thank you for watching this video, for clicking like, and if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe and join the Dragon Army, and we'll see you in the next video.